Thank you so very much for coming. We think at the Sheriff's Department it's very important for us to do quarterly forums where we talk about issues of interest to the communities that we serve. Now, the way we're going to do this evening is each one of the panelists will discuss or talk about what their organizations do for about a minute or two, and then we're going to have questions from the department and from our guests here. And so let's start with you, Pastor Dickerson.
Our church has been doing prison ministry for over 25 years. I've been doing it close to 30 years. And we have a prison prevention ministry at the church, the Future Hope training program at the church, which help those who are coming out of incarceration to get some skills in the construction industry. And we also have one-on-one mentoring as well for those that are trying to get plugged back into the community as returning citizens. So it's something that I've been doing for years, and it's something that I think everyone should be concerned about. One of the most famous prisoners of all time is Jesus Christ himself. So I think it's a part of the duty of the church to reach out to those who are incarcerated.
So my name is Charmaine Higgins, and Strive is a nonprofit organization. We've been around for 20 years, and we serve returning citizens. We provide job training and overall workforce development training for our returning citizens. Our program is in 2 phases. The first phase is a 5-week program, Monday through Friday, where we tell our clients that they are at work, and we take them through all the rigors of a new job. So being on time, dressing appropriately, providing constructive criticism to them, on and on and on. After that first phase, they then enter the job placement phase where they work with our senior placement specialist, himself and a returning citizen. And he helps them find full-time jobs. We only provide full-time jobs for our clients. Last year, we placed over 200, almost 300 clients, half of whom were returning citizens, and we're located right in the Codman Square section of Dorchester, 2 doors down from the Codman Square Health Center. And we have the great fortune of having William Dickerson, Reverend Dickerson, as a board member. I'm
education chair in the City Council, so really looking at cutting the dropout rate. And what we found is Northeastern actually did a study. Students who drop out who are ages 16 to 24, on average, on the books, they make $2,600 per year. That's the median. And we know that they can't survive on that. We also have found out that over the course of their lifetime, they actually cost us $400,000. And another interesting statistic is that 28 out of 100 of them are in jail any day of the year. So we want to stop that actual pipeline into prison. The other thing, and actually Sheriff Tompkins, I'm not going to call you by your first name. We also have been working with Sheriff Tompkins on the creation of an Office of Reentry at the city level. It's too bad that currently most of our reentry actually happens with the police department. And they are very good at entry, not so great at the reentry part. So we really want to make sure that we shift funds in particular to create housing. If we're able to stabilize people's housing, then we can send resources to them. And then lastly, and we are also working on one other program. There's a program called the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. It's out of Texas. And what they're doing is they have C-level folks who go behind the walls, and they teach people about entrepreneurship. And one of their star graduates actually came out and started a business, and he has a cleaning business that does over $7 million in sales per year. We have great, awesome folks who just need a simple opportunity, stabilizing their housing, getting them the education and training that they need, and they can soar.
Project Place works with men and women who have experienced homelessness and who are struggling with addiction, but who have made a commitment to their sobriety. We work with folks who are returning from war to civilian life and having a difficult time adjusting, and we also work with folks coming out of the correction system. One thing they all have in common is they're all motivated to work. They face a lot of barriers, and our job is to address those barriers individually through support that we give them through the various staff. But we run 3 small businesses, speaking of entrepreneurship, Since 1991, we've been running small enterprises called social enterprises. We employ about 100 people a year through these enterprises. It gets people in the habit of working, practicing work. They do get paid to do it. And it also gives them the advantage of when they go out to transition to a permanent job, they do have that work history and the referral from us. We do housing assistance and job training. And just to note that we have had a wonderful partnership with the House of Correction for the last 10 years and served over 500 women with a 54% job placement rate. So we're very grateful for that partnership.
The Urban League is a civil rights organization that's been around for about 104 years at the national level, and here in Boston we're 95 years plus. Our primary focus is on workforce development, where we partner with corporate entities or organizations where we provide what I call skill-based training, where it is inclusive of technology skills as well as with a national career readiness credentials. What does that mean? That means that we will give you an opportunity to test out and find out what you're passionate about, but also give you a certification so an employer will be able to distinguish you before that when you finish the training. Secondly, we do the State of Black Boston, which is a report that we do which really analyzes where we are in terms of poverty, single female heads of households, so we know exactly where the challenges are. As it relates to individuals who come into the Urban League who have COREs, the biggest challenge that we know from training those individuals is not that their desire to work or their passion to work. We have them focus in on a career rather than a job, primarily because you can get a job today and you can lose the job tomorrow, but we want you to be more focusing on a career. The key is that we need to make sure we match you up with employers who are CORE sensitive. Secondly, we consider ourselves culturally competent in terms of what we try to do. We want to make sure that we find out from you what are the barriers that are in your life that prevent you from sustainable employment. So we try to do that, and then we triage what those particular barriers are and work with you through case management, so that at the end of the day, we want you to be successful not only through our training programs, so when we put a stamp of approval on you, then we know, we connect you up with an employer, that we know what are the skills that they need, how do you become successful in that organization where you can grow. We feel that the workforce development piece is what we do best. We were doing a whole lot of things trying to save people. We narrowed it down to workforce development, and that's what we do. We believe that's the best pitch out the gate for us, and we try to make sure we respond to whether we don't care what color or gender you are, or whatever sexual orientation you bring to the door. When you walk through the Urban League, we're gonna wrap our services around you, and we guarantee that when you leave that building, you're gonna be better, stronger, and wiser, that you can help yourself, your family, and your community.
So, Darnell, to that end, I'm curious as to what you consider success when you are placing folks in employment. And let me flesh that out a little bit by saying we have a job placement specialist at the Sheriff's Department, and we try to get men and women employment. And what we found is if they're able to retain those positions in employment beyond 6 months, they generally hold on to them for a lot longer. But getting from day one to the end of the 6 months is a real trying period. Talk to us about what you look at as your success benchmark.
I think, first of all, I think it's a great question. And anything between 6 months to 18 months would be considered a success. Here's why. Because we try to tell people, even in our training, and I'm going to just be plain so folks will know how you can get it. I don't care. Grandmama's sick, cat up is up the tree. You don't get paid on Friday and call out on Monday. Because what that means is that you're on a probationary status. And so therefore, your punctuality, we believe at the Urban League you can't be late. You should be early, and because being late is not acceptable. Can't call in sick. If you can't make it to work, then that tells us that you may not be ready to go to be on that line, because people are going to be watching you and measuring whether or not are you adding value to my organization or are you going to cost my organization. So to be in a job anywhere from 6 to 12 to 18 months, that's a success, because now you have what I would call an attitude that you are doing something for yourself. You're not looking for a handout. You're not looking for a hand up. You're looking for an opportunity to say that I can be an individual contributor to that organization. Secondarily, what it means is that your children and your significant others will look at you differently now because you are contributing to the overall success of the family unit. And so you're also going to be able to add value to the community in which you live because you're not engaged in activities that are not conducive to a successful lifestyle. That's how we look at success. And our job is to give you feedback, coaching. You and a supervisor don't see eye to eye, pick up the phone and call us, and we can talk you through that. So in fact that it's not the supervisor, it might be your approach. And sometimes it could be the supervisor, but we try to walk you through that through case management. You know, and that's what success means to us.
And to that end, Charmaine, let me ask you about that when you talk about the individual versus the supervisor. What we found at the Sheriff's Department is when we're placing folks in employment, a lot of these folks have either had limited or no professional job history. And so we have to work on what we call attitude adjustment so that they understand the small things like punctuality, you know, being on time, being able to be a part of a team. Do you have to do the same thing at Strive? Do you have training so that you explain to folks, once you get on the job site, this is how you have to conduct yourself day in and day out?
Absolutely. So our mantra at Strive is if you can change someone's attitude, you can change their behavior. We work with chronically unemployed individuals, be they men or women, returning citizens or not. And when they come to Strive, they come with very little to no work history. And so our job and that of our trainer, who's also here in the audience, and I would like to just take a moment to introduce Ryan Hargrave, who is the trainer for the returning citizens, and Rupert Saunders, who's the best job placement specialist in the planet. And so it's Ryan's job to help these clients understand the soft skills. Many times when an individual gets a job, it's not the task necessarily that they can't perform, it's that they don't show up to work on time, that if their boss says something to them that they don't like, they're prone to curse the boss out, or they can't take criticism, they don't know how to work in a team. And so the 5 weeks that our clients are with us, we tell them you are at work. Our program is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. During that time, they work in teams. We also give them GED instruction, computer instruction, but all the while they're learning how to show up on time, how to dress appropriately, how to speak appropriately, and we're very successful at that. That's where we make our mark on our clients. And it starts with helping them change their attitude. Many of them returning citizens, and specifically, but also just all of our clients, have very large chips on their shoulders. And for some of our clients, the mean mug that they walk around with, that's an immediate turnoff to employers. So we help them through that 5-week process of turning a different face onto their employment search. And we've been very successful. We've been very successful.
Pastor Dickerson, I want to go to you. I've got a question from the audience, and it goes like this. There are a lot of ex-offenders who are looking for church homes and spiritual guidance upon release. Is there a forum or website where they can research or learn about churches and the church's missions?
I think you have to do it individually. They have a directory that is called Coming Home Directory. That Coming Home Directory, it has a plethora of different services that are offered for those who are coming back to the community. And I think there's a few churches there that are listed, but the best way is to, by referrals and checking out that church, the missions and all that online, or give them a call. You know, I would say give them a call and find out, you know, directly about the church. And then visit the church with the person who's coming back home, because that's important too. You know, you want to make sure they have a welcoming environment. You don't want people looking at them funny and, you know, all that. And they can feel that they connect, and find out if they have a men's group, you know, and they connect with the men's group, and then other things from there. But I would also say that it would be very important that they have a mentor, or what we might say a prayer partner, or some might say a recovery coach for those that had an addiction problem. But that person would be very helpful in making that connect.
Suzanne, talk to us about your definition of success in job placement, and who are, you don't have to name the employers, but what industries are you trying to get individuals placed into?
So we have about 1,000 people that walk through our doors on an annual basis, and only 400 of them are actually enrolled in our programs, because the other 600 are really have other needs, and really emergency needs that need to be addressed before they can even think about getting a job and being successful. So for those 400 people, we really do try to individualize, given that we're working with veterans, we're working with women who live in shelters, we're working with folks that returning citizens. So we really look at what is their plan, and I think it's been stated earlier, we really want to help them to build a career. But people have different concerns and different issues that they have to address. So there is, success for us would be that they form a relationship that they can trust with the staff at Project Place, that they feel like they're being serviced. And there are plenty of people that are in the agency, either working in one of our businesses or a graduate of one of our job training classes, that can mentor or at least support people that if you, and again, many of our folks struggle with addiction, so you know, whether it's a recovery coach or a sponsor or just somebody else who maybe be 6 months beyond you in terms of their own sobriety, that can say, you know, just keep doing it, you're going to get it right at some point. I think success for each individual is different. I think that ultimately everybody wants a job. With a job, you get it's a stabilizing factor in their lives. You get your dignity. I think most people don't want to be known as a homeless person, but a person who's working. I think our society defines people by what they do, and often by where they work. But if we make our commitment to work with folks over a long period, we say we're going to love you for the next 2 years. I think many of our clients think we're just going to haunt them for the next 2 years. But the point is, in order to build a career, you have to have that first job. And the jobs that they usually get initially are in the service industry, which is unfortunate because as a starting point, it's a minimum wage job. But it's often just that. It is a starting point. And so in order to get a better job, we stick with that person, and they stick with themselves. So we're able, the City of Boston has hired many of our graduates in Parks Department, Department of Public Works. We are now working with the trades because that's a growing industry. In order to build those relationships with some of those folks, we have to build them individually. It's not like I can say, okay, you know, now the Plumbers Union is suddenly going to hire all our folks. You know, you have to know somebody to know somebody. And it's like, just like the rest of us, how we've gotten jobs. We knew somebody, or we got on a career path, and that helped us build our relationships to further our career. So I think success for the individual is to feel like they are moving forward in their lives. And sometimes it's, you know, the adage, one day at a time, one step at a time.
So what we do, the mission of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department is care, custody, and control. And when I stand in front of folks, I like to explain what that means, because it's more than just lock up folks and throw away the key. On average, when folks come to stay with us, they've been sentenced to 2.5 years or less, and on average, they're there probably between 10 and 14 months. I'm talking about both men and women. When you look at care, custody, and control, what I like to do is define for folks what that actually means. And I start with custody. If you look up the word custody in the dictionary, there's 2 meanings. The first is imprisonment, and that's what we pay, that's what the taxpayers pay us to do, to keep their property and their persons safe. But the second meaning, and one that this administration stands wholeheartedly on, is guardianship. Because I do believe that in some respect, we are our brothers and sisters' keepers. And we do have to look at the dynamic of sending as many people to jail as we do. As most of you know, this nation incarcerates more people than any other nation on the planet. It costs between $46,000 and $60,000 annually to incarcerate. The recidivism rate is 46%. On average, our population, both men and women, have a math and reading proficiency level of for the 5th or 6th grade. And so although some of these folks will go on to college, most won't. And so the question then becomes, how do you want folks to return back to their communities? The same as when they left, worse or better. And so we think when you talk about guardianship, you're talking about wrapping your arms around individuals to get them the support services that they need. Control is that element that allows us to reconfigure the way folks think or act. And then there's care. And I believe that the hallmark of any vibrant community or vibrant society is how does that community, how does that society tend to and take care of the most compromised in that society. Not the folks in the middle pack, not the folks at the top, but the most compromised. And I'm going to ask a question of each one of you, and I'm going to start with you, Tito, and I would ask you to keep your answers reasonably brief. But here's the thing. We have about 1,800 people on a daily basis incarcerated at our facilities. 85% of that population is there because of some involvement with drugs or drug abuse. 42% presents with some form of mental illness, from the mildest form to the most aggressive. And so I talked to folks at the State House and at City Hall about the need for more money for detox and mental health beds. We need more diversionary programs. But because the budget does not have enough money factored into it, if someone does something wrong, they're sent to jail. Now, we can handle it, and we do handle it, but that's not what we're built to do. So, Councilor Jackson, I'm very curious as to where, and the rest of the panelists come down on, the need to really address mental illness and substance abuse in a holistic way so that we can get folks the resources that they need and not send them to jail.
So, first off, I find it paradoxical that you have folks there for up to 24 months, 2.5 years, for selling marijuana, and that the state is proposing right down the street from you some folks who don't particularly look like the people who are in your jail who are proposing selling marijuana, and they're going to make $3.5 million to $5 million a year. I think we all should check our mental health issues when that is actually happening. And so that's the first point. It's hurt people who are hurting people. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder. I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that in the city of Boston, I think we got it right on Boylston Street in terms of dealing with mental health issues. I think we got it right in terms of dealing with financial issues that people who are hurt have to deal with. I think we got it right relative to giving people the support that they needed. But we need to treat people on Blue Hill Ave who get hurt the same way that we treat people on Boylston Street. We need to make sure that they get all of the resources that they need. And it's
but the question is, how do we do that?
How do we do that? So one, our dollars can be better. It's $46,000 a year to go to your house. It's $19,600 to go to school for a year in the city of Boston. We, one, have to make sure that more of our young people are staying in school so they don't have a fifth or sixth grade reading level. But then also, we have to make sure that we have the trauma resources that are happening on site. Not when something happens in school, because that's not most often people don't have the exposure there, but we need to make sure that in the school setting that happens, but also in the community setting. This happened on Boylston Street. Right now, there folks are speaking about the PTSD that's happening there. That's where the One Fund is moving, right? The One Fund is also moving to people who are having hearing issues from that. And I do know that the night of the bombing, that there was a gunshot victim from Roxbury. The rooms were marked for people who were coming from the bombing, and they said that you have to be quiet around them. There was not that same marking for someone who was from Roxbury who was shot. We also have to make sure that we're funding this at the proper level. The last point is around the issue of diversion. 95% of people are actually going to get out. and they're going to have to reintegrate into society. And so I would just say that the version 2.0 of query reform is simply, we can't just shut your record and get rid of, if you have a 10-year gap in your record, yeah, you might not have anything on your record, but they're gonna ask you what you were doing. The version 2.0 is some type of credential that says that you took some classes or something that distinguishes you from someone who didn't take a class. And then in addition, in some states, what they're proposing is also the state bonding these individuals to work at companies. The real aspect of this is that we as a state have to use our bonding capacity to step forward and actually reintegrate people into our society.
Same question, Pastor Dickerson, around the need for more attention and resources to mental health and substance abuse issues.
A lot of times kids are misdiagnosed, and because they're not properly diagnosed, they tend to handle them differently. And when they are having problems in the school, they need to know what you know, does it come from a psychological issue, domestic issue? A lot of the parents of some of the school-age kids are dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder that we're talking about. And I think the starting point is that the hurt, the pain, the drug addiction, the anger, and all of what we see in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan has to be looked at as not a black community problem, but an American problem. And when it's looked at as an American problem, we will, like Councilor Jackson said, begin to treat it fairly. And so I think that, one, we have to properly diagnose what's going on with the young people. Secondly, we need treatment on demand. Thirdly, we have to be honest that if we're going to make certain proposals to do certain things like sell marijuana, you know, we have to recognize that for years there have been groups of people that have been targeted because it's selling weed, and now we have to change the whole dynamics. And I think that the third element is that we have to look at those who are incarcerated, who have mental illness problems, who have serious psychological maladjustments because of growing up, and we have to treat them not as inmates, not as people who are incarcerated, but treat them as citizens that we're concerned about their total development holistically. And then fourthly, we have to put a demand on those who are making these decisions that they make the right decisions with fairness and equity across the board, because everyone's being impacted. And we have to look at it as an American problem, a human problem, and it brings dignity to those who can be serviced the right way, and our dollars will be well spent, and we can use more on education and prevention.
I'm going to go Darnell, Suzanne, Charmaine, same question, but also talk about the reentry aspect of it when you're talking about folks that have mental illness or substance abuse issues, while also not only combating those issues, but trying to then move into the labor force. Let's start with you, Darnell.
I try to go back to the root cause when you talk about drug dependency. And I just made a few notes, and I'm thinking that from our experience at the Urban League, and I don't do this work by myself, I look at my staff that's in the room and our young professionals, as well as my guild members that I'm looking out at. They're the ones who really are helping me do this work. I just happen to be the person sitting here, but I want you to know that there's a team of folks who actually do this work. One of the things that we try to do when people come to us is that we try to triage. But if we break this thing really down, Sheriff, it's simply this. People are stressed out, just living. I don't care if you're white, black, Latino, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. You got bills, you got stress, and what happens is that the diet of sugar and salt, and then we want to try to escape. And it starts out with a beer, then it escalates. And then next thing you know that you're addicted to alcohol, and then it leads on to either stronger forms of drugs in order to escape the reality. And the next thing you know, you're more dependent upon that because you're trying to escape. We try to tell people who come to us that there are skill sets that you need to have on this side of Melnina Cass Boulevard. and there are another set of skills that you have to have on the other side. So you need to be bilingual. You really do. In order to be successful, you got to navigate. But when you have drug dependency and mental illnesses, we need to, and it really comes down to policy decisions that are made at the state and at the city and the federal level, and then it's the priorities that we make in terms of our budget decisions. And so when you follow how the money, if you don't know anything else about government, follow the money. And when you look at when the budgets are being determined, the policy decisions that are being made and the priorities. So therefore, when it comes to mental illness and when it comes to drug addiction, there's less resources that are put towards those areas. Therefore, that's answering your real question. So if we don't have the resources to do it, you got to do catch can. You got to find a program that's going to respond to your needs, respond to your spiritual development, and then you're going to have to be, you're going to have a drive within you to get beyond the addiction, beyond the mental situations, because you can't rely upon government to do everything.
Ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
A follow-up question. So if you look at the roster of organizations, people that sit on your boards are some from, they come from major companies. Mm-hmm. You do a lot, you're very faithful, faith-based man, and you do a lot with politicians. When you say that there's not enough money, enough resources for mental health and for drug dependency, then the question really becomes why? Why? Why is that? I mean, and you run with, you work with a lot of these folks, Darnell. Tell us why there's this reluctancy to put the money where it's really needed versus other places.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to people don't, now I can't say that they don't care. That's not their focal point. And we have to fight for whatever it is that we're trying to get that's going to deal with these issues, in my humble opinion, because they're going to be looking at, they'll talk about the infrastructure of the bridges and the roads. They'll talk about building of the schools. They'll talk about improvements in outside spaces. But the most important resource is people. And so when it comes down to priorities, if you don't follow the budgetary process, you're going to realize that the money gets shifted, and it's a battle. You got urban legislators, you got rural, and you got suburban. And you got to do horse trading in each one of those kind of circles in order to get the money. And that, whatever the budget is for the state, that's where the issue is. The state is not by themselves. So I think this is the state, it's the federal government. You got gridlock in Washington. You got mixed priorities, I think, at the state level. And then you have at the local level. So I think the challenge becomes is that we need to become more coalesced around what is it that we want and how do we go after it in order to get the resources to do exactly. Now, we spend a lot of money putting folks here, but we spend a minimum amount of money to get the job done after they return. And that's where the folks that are here between Strive and Workplace, all of us, we have to scratch for the money that we get in order to do more with less.
We do have a decision to make as a society, how we look at human costs and dollar costs. I think the issue, though, is that it's a hell of a lot cheaper to offer hope than to incarcerate a life. And what you said, $46,000 to incarcerate someone? Well, to be successful with women who have been in the House of Correction, who have struggled with drugs and alcohol, who have made some bad decisions, when they come out, what it costs us is about $8,000 to provide some mental health services, some education. We have like 6 or 7 partners that we work with that we do wrap ourselves around these women. And these women have a lot of courage because, one, they cross the threshold and they ask for help. How many of us actually ask for help when we really, really need help? So they're already determined to make some changes in their lives. And I know they don't always make it the first time, but that's where we come in. We have faith. And I remember a woman who spoke at our graduation that you were so kind to attend our annual meeting. And she said, when I gave up on myself, I knew that the staff that I met inside, who were also there for her when she came on to the outside, they had my back. That you believed in me when I didn't believe in you. So we do have to wrap ourselves around folks. But the cost of her being successful was $8,000 versus incarcerating her again for another year, $46,000. So for me, I think we have to do a better job at articulating to the politicians to give them the tools they need, the words they need to share with a society that, look, it will cost you more money if you don't do something.
At Strive, we see individuals who have been failed by any number of societal systems, whether it's the school system, breakdown in the family, and they come as broken people. And so what we're very good at is staying in our lane. We do workforce development, we do job training. We're fortunate in that we are 2 doors down from our partner, the Codman Square Health Center, and when we do encounter individuals, our clients, who may present mental health challenges, we're very good at referring them immediately. In many cases, we walk them to the health center. We also have Bill Walczak, who's the former founding CEO of the health center, on our board, so that's helpful. We also refer our clients who need mental health counseling to Whittier Street. To talk about costs, so Darnell mentioned 19,000, Sheriff, you mentioned 46 to 60,000 to incarcerate someone. At Strive, our cost per participant is $3,500. So when you talk about what is the best return on investment, it's working with organizations like the Urban League, like Project Place, like Strive, where we provide as many resources as possible, given the tremendous restraints that we have on us as nonprofits. We have to fight for every single dollar, and we're good at turning a dollar into tens of thousands of dollars to help as many clients as possible. And so it's been said before, it is a funding issue, and we have to, as leaders, educate our clients that they need to become advocates, that they need to vote, that they need to lobby, that they need to get involved with the political process. Because what I know for certain is those who vote get heard. And so I would encourage all of us to vote for rising stars in our midst and those who are serious, and give voice to the issues that we're raising here, because they're critical. And like Pastor Dickerson said, we're dealing with hurt and broken people. And so at Strive, we work very hard to put in front of our clients those people ourselves who have overcome some of the same challenges, whether it's homelessness, addiction, incarceration, because at any given moment, we all need someone to look to say, if she can do it, if she can change, then I can too. And that's what we're all about right now.
One of the problems that I see here when you talk about education is the fact that in our public school system, oftentimes we no longer teach civics. We no longer teach that element that talks about community and how community works with government, and we don't talk about what it means to vote. And one of the unfortunate things, in 2005, we created a program called the Choice Program, where we send officers into schools to talk to kids. Principally, we started because we wanted a child to have an interaction with an officer or an adult in uniform when they weren't in trouble. Okay, that's how it started. And then once we got there, we talked to them about bullying and safety and internet safety and so on and so forth. But we found out that they didn't have civics courses. And so we asked if we could create a civics curriculum, and they said yes, and we teach that. And it got so good to us that we also teach the inmate population in our facility civics. Because look at it this way, if you go back 10 or 20 years, 1 or 2 or 3 decades, and civics has been eliminated, if you go forward 3 decades, it's no wonder that folks don't have a real understanding of what civics is all about and what it really means. And so when we talk about voting and the like, we really do need to emphasize what community is all about. And I'll close by saying this. I grew up in the projects in Harlem. We had 8 buildings, 19 floors, 10 units to each floor. In my building, there were 190 units. I knew every family in that building. Where I live now, I know the family on both sides of me, the couple in front of me, and maybe 1 or 2 down the block. I don't know community the way that it used to be.
We're competing with a whole different attitudinal mindset in terms of the movies, the music that we are confronted with, that it's a fast life that it was more simpler then. And I don't know if we can ever go back. I don't think we can. But the fact becomes is that how do we get people to understand before they get to you that there is an alternative way to make it? Because they look at it sometimes as we're lame, or they don't realize that they see us in suits, but they don't know we came from those same project situations. But the fact is, what made us leave the projects, or how does the phrase go? I may have been born in the projects, but I had to leave the project mentality behind. And that's sometimes more difficult to break these days, because people think that they want to be, and this is language we used in my day. You said you're trying to be nickel slick and make and game the system in order to get ahead. And then you get caught in the system, you come back out, and now you got to file out that you can't find a way out. That, to me, that's the real crux of the issue. How do we get them before they get into the fly trap? And that's where I think I try to spend my time by being a role model for that, as opposed, in addition to doing when they come out. But if we can get them on the front side, I'd rather prevent a fire than put out a fire.
Kids from the Caribbean islands, kids that have background from Latinos, et cetera, they need to know about their history. For example, when you talk about Nat Turner among black people, they talk about the fact that he was a strong preacher, a powerful man. Talk about him from a Eurocentric standpoint, he was a slave and a rebel, an evil man that killed people, right? So we have to have some balance, because we esteem highly the so-called founding fathers of our nation. They're slave owners, most of them, right? So and that's so hypocritical when we teach that to a diverse group of people. And I think that when we look at civics, we gotta change the way it's taught even now, and make it more broad and inclusive, so that everyone can understand that regardless of where you come from, your ancestors have helped this nation to be what it is today. You know?
One of the battles that we did win this year with Boston Public Schools is they were actually going to get rid of the history department, and they were going to merge it into another department. We have people like the folks in this room who are able to advocate to make sure that we have a distinct history department as well as a distinct social studies department. And we are actually working to incorporate Latino history as well as black history. Black and Latino students make up 80% of the students in the Boston public school system. It is absolutely critical that all of those young people know where they came from, so they know where they're going, and it shouldn't be to hang out with the sheriff.
We do voter registrations, and I'm sure everybody here does them as well. I think the problem is people don't feel like their vote counts. And listen, you know I love you. So I think what we have to do is have someone, an elected official who's not running that year, come and say, okay, not just do voter registration, but talk to folks about what it means to be an elected official and to be your voice amplified. And I think we don't do enough of that. And we don't engage enough of our politicians in that process. I mean, we're thrilled when they come to visit, you know, but I think they need to talk to the folks that are in our training classes, because I think that makes it more real for them, because they don't feel, even if they did vote, it would make a difference. And somebody's got to convince them otherwise.
What I'd like to do, like we did with an opening statement, I'd like to give you each an opportunity for a closing statement, albeit brief, Darnell. But to just talk to us about any issue that you think maybe that we did not cover or that you want to emphasize, and then close by giving us the contact information for your organizations. Those that haven't, please let folks know how to get in touch. There you go, Darnell, please start.
I thought about not knowing that question, but I thought about what would I leave you with, and there's really 4 things that I would say to those that are looking to be employed. And these 4 questions I've said to multiple audiences, but I want to share it with you. If you're in the job market, the first question you should ask the person that's going to hire you, can I trust you to do the work? Can I trust you if I go home and give you an assignment, whether or not that you're going to complete it to its end? Second question is that, can I do the job? Do I have the skills the aptitude and the functionality to perform the job to the best of my ability. Third thing is that, do I fit that organization? In other words, you can't have a giraffe operating in the elephant room and vice versa. So you need to make sure that the organization you're trying to join, can you fit within that culture, within that orientation? And when people come to the Urban League, we treat them as customers, so we try to provide them with the best customer service going forward that we are experienced with. And then lastly, the question you should be asking yourself, can I grow? Can I grow in that organization? So the first thing, can I trust you? Second thing is that, can I do the job? The third thing is, do I fit? And the fourth thing is, can I grow? If you respond to those questions, not from the employer's perspective, but from your perspective. So therefore, then you will know that you're gonna, because if you get a job doing what you are passionate about, when you wake up in the morning, when you go to work, it's not like work. I'm doing what I've been called to do. And I got somebody to pay me to do what I'm passionate about. It's not like work. And so therefore, I'm gonna be good at it. I'm gonna be better than anybody in the building. And so in closing, I'll just say that I hope that what we've said tonight has been meaningful and helpful, that has moved the meter, and that we can coalesce and connect up after.
And one more time, your contact address?
Our contact is 617-442-4519. And then our website is www.ulem.org. That stands for the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. We're right next to the building where WILD used to be, right there on Warren Street.
Thank you, Darnell. Suzanne.
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins, and thanks everybody for being here tonight and for listening. So I was thinking what makes, you've heard from folks here who have been very successful in working with folks who have asked for help and who have given you your trust. And so I think about that. You mentioned, I've been around at Project Place, yes, for close to 2 decades. And I think what inspires me, what makes me get up in the morning, and it really is seeing our graduates succeed. So I think about what is success, and in particular when I look at the women who are, have been in prison and who are coming out and trying to change their life and change their family life. And what does it take for somebody like that to make a change? And I think it really does take a community of support. It takes role models. It takes, to see somebody else be successful, to know that you can be successful. It takes leadership. And in the case of Sheriff Tompkins, and prior to that, Sheriff Cabral, really believed that people could make it, and they absolutely didn't want to see them back at the House of Correction. It takes committed staff, Beth and Brenda, and folks that you've pointed out, Charmaine, that are in the audience tonight as well, and Darnell, you mentioned. It takes people who are really committed, who are really patient, and who also believe that people can be successful. It takes somebody like Councilor Jackson to come by and visit and talk to people and to encourage them to be part of the system for change. It takes spiritual guidance. We see that a lot with both our staff and our clients and our board members, that they need something bigger than themselves. And so when I think about that, and I think about being at Project Place for 2 decades, I think I work with incredible people, and there's an incredible network, but it's our graduates who really inspire me. And when I see their success, and I think, well, we've contributed a little, I see a lot of brave people really against the odds trying to make a difference in their lives, and that's inspirational.
And your contact information once again?
www.projectplace.org. Ask for Beth.
Councilor.
I just want to note, I think when I think of success, I think of a couple of people. I have a friend, his name was Dave Jefferson, and he actually just went to, he's actually in New York now. He worked for the Europe program, but he had been behind the walls. He is now in a master's program in New York. That warms my heart to think of an individual who's actually gone, and as the young people say, started from the bottom, now you're here, right, has gone through all of that. I think of the people when I go to Haley House, there's a young man who's behind that counter whose name is Nate. And he said to me the other day, hey, I'm really trying to do my thing. I hope I don't mess with his job. But he's trying to get into the Building Pathways program. These are the people who I think of and I'm motivated by. It's why we're starting a commission on the status of Black and Latino boys and men. It's also the reason why we need to create an office of reentry at the city level so we can deal with the housing issues. We can deal with how folk get their license back, because we haven't even talked about that. We can deal with the fact that if you have a child and you're in arrears on that, all of the things that go along with that. We have to change this mantra of lock them up and throw away the key. And also, as elected officials, we have to have the backbone and the spine to stand up to these powerful interest groups who try to have mandatory sentencing and have all those other crazy laws that put our people disproportionately behind bars and have them in the positions that they're in. And so lastly, I'm happy that we have a sheriff who isn't doing what all the other sheriffs are doing. And I'm going to keep it real. There's some people who you meet with on a monthly basis who are trying to charge prisoners, who tried to charge people who were under their care to be in jail. Right? There's some folks out there who were not doing right by this. You are approaching this from a public health perspective, and you're approaching it from the perspective of, I don't want to see you again on this side of the wall. It's the right way to go about doing things, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I look forward to continuing to partner with you.
Contact information?
My email address is tito.jackson@boston.gov. And you can reach me at 617-635-3510. Again, thank you very much, Sheriff Tompkins.
Thank you, Councilor. Charmaine?
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins, and all of you who have gathered here. Success is what you see here, the faith-based community, nonprofits, politicians, elected officials, and all of you working on this very important issue. Three takeaways. One, come to strive. We do it better than anybody. We'll put you in front of people who understand the challenges that come with being a returning citizen, and we'll give you hope. And many times, our returning citizens lack that. Secondly, I would encourage everyone to vote. Vote for officials who walk the talk. Too often we get hoodwinked and bamboozled by form without substance. And here you have substance. And so just be mindful of that. Third, come to strive. My contact information, www.bostonstrive.org, 617-825-1800, 2 doors down from the Codman Square Health Center. Thank you all so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins, and thank you all of you all that stayed to the very end. I appreciate it, because I know how it is listening to panels, and I just commend those that are out there that do the work, you know, for all the work that you do. We really appreciate it so very much, because many of you all could have been sitting up here yourselves. I want to say this, that the DOC need more black volunteers to go into the DOC and visit. You know, we do. It's very much, and we need to check on our loved ones who are incarcerated, especially those who are sick, because the health problems are bad, and the medical treatment is not always as good as it should be. And so your phone calls, you speaking up, it means a lot. So they won't just say, oh, here go Dickerson again, right? We need to hold our returning citizens accountable to give back. Once, you know, they have the jailhouse salvation, you know, and, you know, come to Jesus moment or come to Allah moment. And then when they get back, they're getting high and chasing skirts. So we hold them accountable. Our Future Hope program has placed people on construction jobs, but like Councilor Jackson said, we need more people of color and blacks in particular to be able to get these jobs. And the violence, homicides, and incarceration that we see in our urban centers and throughout this nation, these are not just black community problems and problems in the city. These are American problems. And until they until they begin to be looked at that way, it'll always be us crying out for help, 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 help. But I think that we need to start looking inwardly. Slavery is still slavery, even if we call it incarceration, okay? And we need to teach our children, that we're not born to be slaves, and finally, teach them to be model citizens and boycott prisons at all costs. God bless you.
All right, so in closing, I would like to thank this austere group of folks that came to speak and talk to us tonight. So can we please have a round of applause for these folks? Second, I'd like to thank you folks. I'd like to thank you folks for coming. And you have to take away and implement and utilize the information that you gained tonight, because if you don't, we'll be here again and again and again saying the same thing with no results. And I like what you said. Slavery is slavery. It's just another.
Slavery is slavery if you call it another name, like incarceration.
And incarceration, yeah, and that is the new slavery system. A big deal was made of the fact that when I became sheriff, that I hadn't come up through law enforcement. My background is in communications and public relations and marketing and so on and so forth. And I've worked with a number of community groups, but my lens is also different. And so I see what goes on behind the walls maybe a little bit differently. And this is not a swipe at law enforcement, because they do one heck of a great job. But I came in and I see it, as you talked about, as a health issue. I see it as, when I think about the fact that in the Commonwealth, the percentage of blacks and Latinos is about 18%, but in my facility it's north of 65%. I have an affinity to that group. I look just like that group. They are me. I am them. And so, I've caught a couple of good breaks, and what do you do if you catch a couple of good breaks? You turn around and you help. That's what we have to do. We have to turn around, we have to help, we have to keep our kids, we have to keep our families out of jail. These are our future leaders. These are our future leaders. We are seeing that our future educators and politicians and entrepreneurs and astronauts and engineers and scientists and doctors and lawyers are being jailed. It's not right, and we've got to change that dynamic. Or as a people, we are totally lost. So listen, we do this Directions for Corrections quarterly at the Sheriff's Department. If you like what you heard tonight, please tell your friends and your families and others. We need to address these issues holistically. The Sheriff's Department is going, as long as I'm there, is going to be one that is really addressing that continuum of care. Once folks walk out of our doors, we can't just say, hey, we'll see you in 6 months when you come back. We have to say, hey, these are the things that we have put in place to help you not come back.